They call her the bedrock for a reason. While others spin, hedge, or emote for the cameras, Princess Anne has built a 5-decade career on a single, unfashionable word: duty. 400+ engagements a year, dawn flights, factory floors, windswept commemorations, fence lines, and hospital wards. A royal life measured not in selfies but in clipboards. When the family machine jolts, it is and who keeps the screws tight. And that is why her position on the Sussex question, as it's being privately described by those who felt the temperature of the room, lands with the weight of iron. She will not spend a drop of her capital trying to broker peace between Prince Harry and the Crown. Not because she can't. Because she won't. Because, in the Princess Royal's worldview, choices have consequences. Family backing is a covenant, not a tap to turn on and off, and betrayal, her word, relayed through lips that have watched 6 decades of royal storms, is not something you excuse because an apology trends for 24 hours. Strip away the sentimentality and what remains is Anne's operating system, tuned by a childhood under Elizabeth II and Philip, refined through a lifetime of early trains and late briefings. The monarchy is a team sport with a brutal scoreboard. You do the work, you respect the institution that shields you, and in return the institution keeps you upright when the weather goes sideways. That is the backing insiders say she believes Harry no longer respects. Backing isn't just a check or a chauffeured car, it's the invisible scaffolding, private secretaries who catch your errors before they become scandals, courtiers who clear the path so your causes land, and 1,000 unglamorous, unacknowledged acts that preserve your ability to serve. And has ridden that scaffold hard for half a century. If you saw her at the coronation, not just smiling from a balcony but riding in armor as gold stick in waiting, you saw the thesis statement, loyalty as muscle memory. So when whispers bubbled that the Princess Royal might be recruited as a go-between, a sensible aunt to thread needles between a wounded father and an estranged son, expectations clung to an old, comforting myth. That Anne, as the spare who thrived, might map that survival strategy onto her nephew. Surely the second child who alchemized duty into freedom could teach Harry how to be useful without being the center of the solar system. That fantasy ignores 2 hard truths and keeps close. First, she was never the spare in attitude. She made herself necessary. She did the miles. She shut the door on self-pity and built a portfolio so large that even critics had to admit she moved the needle. Second, she does not believe in interventions where the subject wants victory, not therapy. You cannot mentor someone out of a memoir already written or a TV special already monetized. In her register, a person's diary tells you their values. Harry's diary and the Crown's calendar now diverge. Her calculation is cold because the role demands it. And does not see her remit as repair every relationship. She sees it as protect the organism. That means husbanding reputation and bandwidth for the parts of the house that are pulling in the same direction. The King's agenda on streamlining and sustainability, the Wales's early years and Earthshot tracks, the edges where soft power still buys hard outcomes, veterans, agriculture, health, and the stubborn business of communities that need attention without theatrics. It also means refusing to throw herself into a reconciliation that, in her estimation, confuses catharsis with course correction. The Sussex brand is built on disclosure. The Crown's survival strategy is denial by professionalism. Those are not compatible engines. The word that stung most in the private briefings wasn't skeptical, it was finished. And, we're told, has concluded this chapter for herself. She will be cordial when proximity demands it. She will not rehabilitate. She will not campaign for access. She will not lend credibility to optics that launder old allegations with new photo ops. In a family where the temptation to heal in public eclipses the discipline to heal in private, that refusal is radical. It is also entirely consistent with her life's thesis: the monarchy is not a feelings project. It survives by rules. Break them, and your circle shrinks to the size of the responsibilities you keep. Understand the context that hardens her line. In an autumn of rolling crises, York headlines reheated with fresh emails and older shame, charity patrons cutting ties, private lodge arrangements scrutinized like statecraft, the senior royals have been forced to choose between 2 bad roads: be seen as lenient and take a hit from the public, be seen as punitive and create martyrs with microphones. The king, older and newly mortal in his own eyes, leans toward containment, Fewer grand gestures, more quiet management, slow pressure, closed doors, no accelerant. William, the heir who learned in fire that optics corrode trust, leans toward clarity. No proximity, no platform, no proximity again. Anne's map is adjacent to the king's, not the heir's. She speaks the grammar of resiliency, not revenge. Freeze the drama without feeding it. Keep doing the work. Let time sand down the story until it bores everyone enough to move on. There is another, less discussed reason she won't don the peacemaker's sash. And respects hierarchy like a religion. If reconciliation is to happen, it is the monarchs to shape and the heirs to accept or decline. An aunt inserting herself above that line would not be diplomacy, it would be noise. Her loyalty to Charles is not etiquette, it's inheritance. She rode at his back on coronation day because the job is to shield the sovereign's flank, not to freelance solutions that complicate his calculus. The Princess Royal has seen what happens when too many private agendas masquerade as public service. The institution spends a year unclogging the pipes. She will not add a teaspoon of drama to that drain. And yet, do not mistake discipline for ice. Those closest to and know the private softness, the unphotographed kindnesses, the blunt compassion, the way she remembers names in rooms full of name tags. That person isn't absent here, she is simply ranking harms. To Anne, the most dangerous poison is not anger, it is the slow erosion of trust in the crown's seriousness. You can survive 1,000 bad headlines if the public still believes you get up and go to work. You cannot survive the sense that you turned the crown into a podcast. Her standard for respecting the backing is brutal because her own bar was set by Elizabeth and Philip. Show up. Don't whine. Take the hit with your mouth shut. Let the work answer the rest. When Harry chose Oprah, Netflix, and an autobiography sharpened around family, and read that not as pain but as volatility. You don't stabilize a system by elevating its most volatile element, you stabilize it by limiting the blast radius. That is what her finished means in practice. No more oxygen. No more borrowed gravitas. No more Aunt's airbag. Look at the last 2 years of her diary and you'll see the philosophy written in logistics. While the commentariat played Where's Waldo with royal rifts, and stitched together schedules that covered the gaps without announcing themselves as patches. She inaugurated, toured, opened, listened, pinned medals, read briefs, and left. No quotes to untangle. No sides to pick. The public felt steadiness because Anne made sure they had something steady to look at. That is the firm in the firm, not the family lunches, but the throughput. Compare that to the Sussex narrative cycle, wounds framed as witness, love packaged as litigation, and you spot the irreconcilable software conflict that underpins Anne's refusal. She can accept personal differences. She cannot accept a media business model that monetizes the institution's private oxygen. The difference is not abstract. Every hour a senior figure spends explaining a feud is an hour stolen from a charity that needs the spotlight to fund next winter's budget. To Anne, that theft is not just indulgent. It is immoral. There's a melancholy in this, of course. By temperament and birth order, Anne could have been the great interpreter, the one who shows a younger generation how to turn the volume down without feeling erased. In another universe, perhaps she and Harry would have done the rural circuits together, muddy boots and blunt laughter, a double act of quietly useful royals moving needles in places that don't trend. That is not the universe we got. And Anne, being Anne, does not waste time mourning hypothetical versions of other people. What does her stance mean for the months ahead? Fewer fairy-tale reconciliation rumors, more hard edits in the family calendar. If the king chooses to keep a channel open, private calls, careful invitations calibrated to avoid the lens and will not obstruct. She will simply decline to perfume the strategy with her presence. If the heir continues to prize a clean perimeter, no cameo optics, no blurred lines at big set-piece moments, and will understand and adjust coverage quietly. Expect, too, that her portfolio will get even busier as the house pays the York tax, replacing dropped patronages and repairing second-order damage where innocent beneficiaries got sideswiped by scandal. That is where and is most lethal, turning drama into work streams. Listen closely and you can hear the old lessons Elizabeth drilled into her daughter resurfacing in this posture. Restraint is not weakness, It is the strongest signal in a noisy age. Mercy is not a photo, it is the decision not to escalate. And sometimes the bravest sentence you can say in a family that lives inside headlines is the one and has reportedly chosen, "No, I will not be the middleman. No, I will not help you turn a saga into an arc. No, I will not risk the Crown's credibility to buy 48 hours of warm coverage. Not because I do not love, but because I do." There will be critics who call this unforgiving, even cruel. There will be fans who call it refreshing, even heroic. And will call it Tuesday. She is the only senior royal who could make that sound like a compliment to the monarchy rather than a contempt charge against the culture. The Princess Royal did not build her legend by emoting into microphones. She built it by finishing the list and asking for the next one. She will not light a candle in the Reconciliation Chapel because she does not believe the chapel is the point. The work is. And if, one day, years from now, the weather changes, if apologies are made not for optics but for understanding, if service returns as a practice rather than a slogan and will not preen about being right, she will nod once, recalculate, and add a chair to a table that got smaller when people mistook attention for affection. Until then, the boundaries stand. Not my fight. Not my problem. Not because she's hard, but because the Crown must be harder than the storm. In a house that has known too much confessional and too little craft, Anne's decision reads like a manifesto written in pencil. Guard the institution, protect the bandwidth, leave feelings to the people who sell them for a living, and when the story tries to make you its protagonist, do the most subversive thing a modern royal can do: refuse the role, do the work, and walk on.